My apologies for the little remix of videos at the beginning, but all right, we got a nice little jam-packed show for y'all. Welcome to Cubfidential, where the greatest and latest Chicago Cubs coverage comes after dark. I am your producer, Mr. Cubfidentiality. We have a jam-packed show for you all. We got a guest tonight. Yes, we have a guest in the building. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our host, JB Ellis. He's going to come at you with a little bit of news, and then we're going to roll right into it. So come on in here, the Brooklyn bad boy himself.
What's going on, Jay? How you been, Mr. Confidentiality?
I've been doing good, man. Been holding it down. How about yourself?
Not bad. I'm waiting for Mr. Ubbs on the news because, we've been working the phone since last night. Got a text from a friend who has a friend in the front office, and there's all sorts of stuff going on at Wrigley Field and those front offices. So the Cubs are talking about trading Robertson over to either the Twins or the Mets. They prefer to trade him out of the league, though, so it's most likely the Twins. They're working on compensation and money. But the Cubs do want Jordan Balcevic in any deal. In case you guys don't know about Balcevic, he throws about 100 miles an hour. Great young pitcher. That's who the Cubs are looking back for him. The Twins do also want Hendricks. So, but the Cubs want to do that in a separate deal. We're going to wait to see what happens with that. But if it happens, remember, you heard it here first on Confidential. So make sure when you see it and it happens, make sure you tag us because we're all over this. But without further ado, let's bring in our guest this week. We got Scott Morgenroth of the South Florida Tribune, the Motor City Madmouth. How you doing tonight, Scott?
Doing great, JB. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Been a long time. I haven't seen you in about an hour. How you been?
Oh, yeah, I know. Just out there busy watching Hogan's Heroes a little to tide me over, one of my favorite shows. And threw a little Green Acres in there as well. So, but here we are, back better than ever again tonight. My goodness, enjoy being on your network for sure. And of course, we love having you on ours as well, South Florida Tribune as well. So
we definitely appreciate it. So, we were talking earlier this week, and you were telling us how one of the probably most popular Cubs of the last 30 years, Sammy Sosa. Right. So you had a couple of different Sammy stories. Why don't you fill us in? Tell us a little bit about Sammy.
Absolutely. Number one, I had an opportunity to work with Sammy Sosa when I was the director of public relations for the Gastonia Rangers, which were affiliated with the Texas Rangers of the South Atlantic League. So Sammy and I spent the 1987 season there. It was pretty neat, to see a guy who was certainly 16 years of age, 17 years of age, really young, coming in and very raw. And yet he had one of the most jovial, free-spirited personalities I've ever had. And we used to have a lot of fun day in and day out at the ballpark, Sims Legion Park in Gastonia. And, again, you build relationships. Baseball is about relationships is what it is. And I'll never forget that, we, toward the end of the season, the owners certainly went ahead, wanted to cut down expenses. These were local owners in Gastonia. I hate to utilize this term, but he was a Bible salesman that owned a ball club. So I don't care what you own at the time. And he told the owner's wife, he'd say, "Nina, you cheat," because they didn't want to buy another bag of dirt to finish out the last couple of games. And I'll never forget how we joked around about that. But later on down the line, I was able to catch up with them when the Florida Marlins at the time were playing at Joe Robbie Stadium. And I'll never forget the Cubs PR lady. Her name was Sharon. I don't remember her last name, Panozzo or whatever her name is, Panazzo. And she didn't really believe that I worked with Sammy. So one day, because I got credentialed for a couple of games over at Joe Robbie Stadium. So I said, "Listen, Sharon, he worked with me back in 87. So as much as she gave me, if body language could tell you anything, JB, this woman did." So I said, "All right." So I decided to say, "Hey, Sammy, what's going on?" And then he looks at me with this old big smile from here to Alaska, JB. And,
Wow.
Giving me the old eye, the smile. I mean, this thing was, his smile reminded me of Canada. It was far and it was wide. And I'll tell you what, Sharon, okay, once upon a time, I held your position at the minor league level. Do you believe me now? I said, yeah, I do. So what do you think happened the very next day? Got in with my pass, got a one-on-one interview with Sammy. Never talked about steroids. We were just talking about reminiscing in old times in North Carolina. He's one of those minor league guys that's so humble that he never forgot me later on. And we had a good time in the clubhouse, and it worked out pretty well. So you talk about a relationship that began when he was at the Class A level. And then when he got to the major leagues, he never forgot about me. And I know a lot of people talk about his performance-enhancing drugs, yet he's never tested positive for it. If he's going to be considered guilty of anything, it'd be the cork patent situation that exploded. Well, he got caught doing that. So, but nevertheless, me, I would always support him, and I was very loyal to him, and he was loyal to me. And what can you say? It was pretty surreal. So, I mean, why the Cubs? I know why the Cubs haven't retired his jersey, but there was a proud time when he put rear ends over at Wrigley Field, and I hope one of these days they get their differences resolved, because it's too bad that he's not cherished a little bit more. But I understand the relationship, that it's a little bit fragile at the moment.
So now, I mean, when you look at Sammy's legacy, I mean, you saw him when he was down in A-ball. You know, he got all the way to, obviously, Chicago, and, you know, made some stops along the way. He played in Texas. He played for the White Sox, you know, but he always had that smile on his face, you know, never tested positive for steroids, but he did have the cork bat. I mean, how do you think, you know, with all the different scandals, it affected his career?
Well, number one, when baseball went on strike in '94, destroyed the game, people tend to forget the fact that him and Mark McGwire, aside from the Cal Ripken consecutive game streak, got people interested again. They did. But yet everybody's willing to look at his steroid situation, or alleged steroid situation. So I think baseball should give him and Mark McGwire a debt of gratitude, because I'll tell you what, between Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak not being compromised or jeopardized, and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, don't sit here and tell me the owners weren't piling extra revenue at the concession stands, souvenir stands, and whatnot, watching these guys hit batting practice, and then having that incredible home run chase that got people's attention, because baseball was in real trouble. And I wasn't so sure, JB, that it would ever recover. So, you know, maybe hopefully history will look the other way. I know he's not getting in the Hall of Fame, because we know the Hall of Fame voters are hard school voters. If they sense you're going to cheat, you're not going to get in. Remember, it's a Hall of Fame that didn't allow Pete Rose in there because of gambling. Barry Bonds is out. Roger Clemens is out. So there's no mercy there. And yet, even though he wasn't convicted, at least people can, you know, realize that Sammy Sosa, to me, helped Major League Baseball go ahead and recover from a disastrous business move by both parties. But yet, as much as I look at the strike, I'm glad Bud Selig did break the union a little bit, because things were starting to get out of control a little bit. And I didn't feel that the players should totally rule everything. And, you know, if they had to sacrifice a World Series, so be it. But the bottom line is Mark McGwire, Cal Ripken Jr., and Sammy Sosa saved the game of baseball, because who knows how much longer it would have taken to recover. So I think that's how Sammy should be looked at. But I guess that's just perhaps call it, JB, a subjective opinion on my part.
So, I mean, you're not the Cubs expert. That's what, you know, I have the other guys coming in later for. But in your opinion, what do you think Sammy meant to the city of Chicago, especially after the labor stoppage in '94?
One would think he should have meant a lot to that organization. When was the last time you had a player with his magnitude? What, Ernie Banks? I mean, my goodness. I mean, you don't get any bigger in Cubs history than Ernie Banks, right?
Yeah, no, not at all.
Just because I don't know. I mean, I've always followed the Cubs because WGN was their super station. I used to watch them. I used to enjoy Harry Carey. I've been to Wrigley Field before, so I don't have to say that's on a bucket list. And I love the stadium. I'm glad that's one of the few stadiums that's still in business where everything else has been torn down. So, you know, and of course, I'm glad that Joe Madden and Theo Epstein snapped that century-old jinx as well. So I think, to answer your question, JB, I would think that the Chicago Cubs fans should really honor and respect his legacy. I really do. He's a big part of their history, and other than Mr. Cubs, will he ever get a statue? I doubt it at this point, but I've seen crazier things happen.
And now, have you had a chance to go to Wrigley?
Yeah, I was there. I believe it was in the '80s, and I was actually there watching the Pistons and the Chicago Bulls, and managed to go ahead and get credentialed for I think one or two Cubs games. I don't remember, but at least it was one. And I'll tell you what, Fenway Park's on my bucket list. I'm glad I got to Yankee Stadium, but to have been to Wrigley Field, spent time with Harry Carey, and being in that press box, it was unbelievable. In fact, I can tell Chicago people out there, I've been to the old Comiskey Park back in the day, not the newer one, and had the good fortune of doing a story on Nancy Faust, the famed organist as well. So, but there, to me, baseball, in Wrigley is iconic. And, my wife is a Brewers fan, so it's neat to be able to see the Brewers and the Cubs have a rivalry separated by 30, 40 minutes away.
So I'm a lifelong Yankees fan that's in Chicago quite frequently. And I could say I've now been to Wrigley Field more than I've been to the new Yankee Stadium because I hate it. And, Wrigley Field is iconic. It's beautiful. I've gone there more times this year than I've gone to the new Yankee Stadium. Just let everyone let that sink in of how much I dislike what the Yankees did with the new stadium and, how great of a place Wrigley is. That you could, there's no place in the world to see a game when you see the ivy, you see the fans of the bleachers, you have the rooftop decks across the street, and the fans are phenomenal. The team isn't what we hoped this year. We'd love to see them do better, but good things are on the horizon. They have a great farm system, but getting back to Sammy and his legacy, do you think that the city of Chicago, because they had a falling out with Sammy towards the end, do you think that that'll ever be mended and he'll be welcomed back there the way he should?
Yeah, I really do, but I think Sammy has a little bit of work to help the situation out for sure. I'm not saying both sides are right, but at some point or another, my goodness, I mean, he brought people in there. He made the Cubs interesting, and they had some success while he was there. I would think so. And, being a lifelong Tigers person, I love Tiger Stadium. I'm just glad I got to Yankee Stadium and Fenway's on the bucket list. I just thought I'd put that in there. But I would hope and pray that the Cubs and Sammy Sosa could come to an understanding and get this guy involved with some alumni old-timers events. I think it would be a good win-win situation for both. But, let's face it, when Sammy walked out on his own and he kind of burned bridges and then found his way over to Baltimore, that certainly was a very bad look for him as well. So I'm just waiting at some point to another, because we have the same situation in Detroit, believe it or not, with Sergei Fedorov, who was a big part of the Red Wings championships, winning 3 titles. And when he burned his bridges with the city of Detroit and the Ilitch family, there's been no cooling down there. And I see a similar situation here in the north side of Chicago with Sammy Sosa. But at some point or another, I don't think the Fedorov thing gets solved anytime soon unless the Ilitch sell it. But there's no reason to think that the Ricketts family and the Cubs people can't get together and go out there and get it straight. I think it needs to really be done, and time has to heal that wound. It really does, because he meant so much for not only city, but the game of baseball. We know, again, even though guys aren't going to be in the Hall of Fame still should be a museum of artifacts to see certain things. Nobody's going to sit here and tell me that when you go to the Hall of Fame, that some of Sammy's paraphernalia isn't in there. And I'll tell you what, the next time I come on this show, and maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, whenever you bring me, I'm going to start looking for Sammy Sosa paraphernalia in the Hall of Fame, if there is any there. And I will take a picture and text it to you to realize that he may not be inducted in the Hall of Fame, but doesn't mean his paraphernalia in there. So I'll be on the lookout for it for sure. But yeah, I think both sides need to get it together, and I think you need to do it soon enough. It's better sooner than later.
Well, Scott, I definitely appreciate you taking the time coming out here tonight. I know it's kind of late on the East Coast where I'm at, but tell everyone where they can find you.
Sure. Folks, please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it, because we're building shows not only in our local area, but as well as nationally. our Twitter accounts at Tribune South, and you can go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, and you can find every aspect of social media that we're there. So South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, please give us a hand, subscribe, and Twitter at Tribune South. And once again, the website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Been a pleasure being on here talking about a guy that me personally had a great working relationship. And I guess you could say, and it was only fitting over at Joe Robbie Stadium that Sammy and I got to have fun talking about reminiscing, and yet realizing that he wasn't too big to forget where he came from, both at the Class A level and showing class, and then subsequently at the major leagues level. So I'm definitely a Sammy Sosa guy, even if perhaps a lot of people haven't quite gone that far. So JB and you guys at Sideline Sports, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a lot of fun, and we look forward to having you on tomorrow's edition of the Sports Exchange.
Well, I appreciate it, Scott. You have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
You bet. Thank you very much, JB. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. Good night. All right, so that was Scott Morgenroth, the Motor City Mammoth, South Florida Tribune. Next, we got Jordan Long, and we're going to talk about...
Did you mention the Baltimore Orioles? I heard him mention Baltimore. John Shears here. 9 wins in a row, baby. Interrupting your Cubfidential to say, oh, what a show is better than Cubfidential. I just wanted to jump on here and say 9 in a row, went to Wrigley Field, and we own you. Wrigley Field is now, we consume that. So now Camden Yards is in Baltimore, and it's in Chicago, so we own that. So thanks a lot, guys. I just want to say that 9 in a row, and we're going to beat you tomorrow night.
Are you kidding me? It's
just a takeover, baby. It's like WCW,
I just left
WWF.
You an hour ago. What are you doing here?
Generation X went into WCW with the tank and rolled over them.
Got lucky.
Boom,
win
baby.
One game. Just because the AL East, no teams under 500. Get out of here. We got more important things to talk about. We're talking about trade rumors that nobody else has. We don't care about a lousy win. One win.
Of course you don't. That's why you're not going to make the playoffs. That's why you're under 500. All right, I have nothing else to contribute to this. Bring on the other guests, but we beat your ass. All right, thanks.
All right, that was John Shear, Sideline Sports at What a Show. The Orioles did have the better of the Cubs tonight, but let's get back to more important things. Let's get back to Cubfidential. We got Jordan Long. We're going to talk a little Milwaukee and some other stuff. First, let's start with the elephant in the room. So you heard about the trade rumors. I know I told you this afternoon that we were working on this. We had our sources. What's your thoughts on what the Cubs are looking to trade and get back? Let's start with that.
Honestly, we're at the point where we're rebuilding. I mean, that's what it is. I know we've been rebuilding this whole season, but if we can get stuff or, prospects, cash considerations back for Robinson, why not? I mean, I want him to go to a place where he's going to win. He's not going to do it here. So if he can succeed somewhere else, why not do it? This is just going to be a domino effect, though. If he leaves, then you're going to probably trade Wilson Contreras. It's just the start of what's going to happen.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with both what Will said to John and to what you said. But, again, I look at things finite. The Cubs are not making the playoffs this year unless they do what the Orioles are doing and they win 9 in a row in the next, before the All-Star break, if there's even 9 games left. Whatever the amount of games, if they, win the rest of the way before that and then come out like a house of fire after the All-Star break, this season's done already. And, if you listen to any of my shows, if you're not going to win it all, let's work to win it all in the future. And the Cubs have a great farm system. They are the Orioles a couple of years ago. So let's get what we can. To me, losing Hendricks, not a big deal. Losing Robertson, he's a relief pitcher. There's more out there. When we start hearing the Contreras rumors, that's where we're gonna see what you've got to get something huge back for him.
For sure. I mean, it's just like last year when we traded, Baez, Rizzo, and Chris Bryant. Those guys I knew they wanted to stay, but it was just like, you got to get out of here. Go have a chance to win, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely interesting to see what's happening. with this team. I think, though, the front office, with what they're thinking, get them out of the league. I think the Twins are great. The Twins are doing the right thing for their organization if they could do that to compete with the Astros and the Yankees. Those are the names they need. So it's the right move on their part. And I think if that opportunity presents itself, they can get back Balshevik. I do it in a second.
Mm-hmm.
There's no thought in my mind. So let's go back to the Milwaukee series. What happened?
It was actually a pretty good series. It was the only series this week that we actually won. We won 2 out of 3. Monday, though, it was a 5-2 extra inning loss. We took a 1-0 lead in the third when Nelson Vasquez had his first ever home run, which is, it's a cool moment to have your first ever home run. It stayed that way until the 7th. The Brewers tied it up. We took the lead again with a Suzuki homer, but again, the bullpen, we know we don't have a strong bullpen. We had 2 outs and the bases loaded, and the guy that you were talking about that's mentioned in trade rumors actually walked Chris Yelich. Actually, Yelich was on third, but still, it was just, you can't do that. When you have a chance to close out a good team like the Brewers, you have to do that, and we didn't. Then we go to the 10th inning, and we've talked about how much we don't like the extra inning rule. Unfortunately, we had chances to actually take the lead. We had bases loaded and 1 out, and our all-stars, Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ, struck out, and basically we didn't score in the bottom half of the inning. The Brewers ended the game with a 3-run home run. But if you look at the game as a whole, we had chances in this game to actually take leads and actually, make the Brewers come back, even though that they were down, 2-1, 1-0. But we had a chance in the fourth inning. Happ was on second, moved to third when Suzuki flew out, but Horner struck out, stranding Happ at third. You can't do that. It's just situational baseball. With 2 outs in the 6th inning, Suzuki at third, Gomes hit into a fielder's choice, ending the inning. It was just, this game was just full of, basically we couldn't get the timely hit. That's just what it boiled down to. And plus our bullpen kind of imploded.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the story of the year. It's been pretty crazy. I don't know what's happening with this. Like I said, it's time to pull the plug. Let's go with Bill and make things better. And start for next year. Because that's the one advantage the Cubs have. They have Wrigley Field. They'll sell tickets. So you don't have to always have a team on the field, that's going to be good. The other side of the city, the Sox, they have to have guys out there to sell tickets, and you can still get tickets even when they're winning.
Well, that's true. I've actually been to that field years ago. I mean, it's a beautiful ballpark. I mean, it doesn't compare to Wrigley. Don't get me wrong. Wrigley has all the history, but it's still a nice ballpark. But I definitely would rather go to Wrigley than the Chicago White Sox. But again, the Wrigley's going to sell out. You're going to get more fans to go to White Sox games because they're not going to sell out as much. It's easier to get a ticket there than it is to Wrigley.
Yeah, without a doubt. It doesn't even compare the two. I still have yet to go there in all my time. I missed the Yankee series this year. So I have not had the chance to go there. But one day I'll get there, it's on the bucket list of places I have to see. But I will see a corn dog game before I'll see a White Sox game. Keep that in mind, Chicago.
So then Tuesday was actually a better game for us. We won 8-3. We went down 2-0, and the guys battled back. Scored a run in the fifth inning. 3 runs were scored, and Happ actually doubled, scoring Horner, and Suzuki then hit a 2-run homer. And the 6th was the big inning for us. 4 runs scored. Ortega triple, scoring Gomes and Nelson Vasquez. Ortega then scored when Suzuki homered. But we gave up a run in the 9th. Offensively, though, in that game, better game played. 11 hits, 8 runs. And basically, you look at the pitching. Our pitching did well, and that in that game, 5 hits, 3 runs, 5 walks, 9 strikeouts, and Hendricks actually started that game, and I believe he came out in 3 for after the 3rd inning. Of course, we know now he's on the injured list, but it was a better played game. And then Wednesday, I'm going to say, was actually the best game of them all. If you like pitching matchups, because of the fact that we won 2-1, no scoring until the 5th. Brewers scored a run with a home run from Herrera. Cubs tied in the 8th when Ortega singled, scoring Morel with 1 out. Could have been a bigger inning, but Horner flew out while Happ fouled out, ending the inning. So we had chances there. But in the 9th, Higgins doubled, scored Wisdom to take a 2-1 lead. And finally, Robertson actually pitched well. Got a 1-2-3 to end the inning. But again, it's been the theme for this series is we had chances to score more. 5th inning, Rivas doubled with 1 out. Higgins flew out and Morel grounded out. I mean, you strand a guy at second, still not good. 6th inning, Simmons at second with no outs. And, you have chances with 2 outs. Just bunt the guy over, get him to 3rd, and then, get a fly ball and, you score him. But that didn't happen. Ortega grounded out, Horner struck out, and Happ flew out. But at least we did our job with the pitching. We only gave up 6 hits and 1 run. I'll take that any day of the week.
So a question for you, on the Tuesday game. You guys, you beat George Costanza. I mean, do we count that as a win?
I mean, it is a win in the books, but is it really a win? I mean, it did happen on that day. Yeah, I'm going to say it's still a win. Either way, you still won 8-3. I mean, it's a little bit funny that it happened on George Costanza Day, but you know what? I'll still take the 8-3 win.
Yeah, I mean, and that was, obviously you look back, the Cubs had a good streak going. They won how many series in a row? We've noticed that the first time I took a little hiatus, the Cubs couldn't win a game.
I mean, I tried to put the blame on Jacob, and Jacob took it well. I mean, it was probably my fault since I was hosting. I'll take the blame for that. But, at least when you went on hiatus the second time, went on vacation, they actually were winning. So I'll take that.
I know. It was a nice little change. And then, you hear the trade rumors, and I think they're just so far back. It's a good move at this point. Now, looking at the All-Star game, Contreras, and Happ got added late. Watching the game on Sunday, the story on Marquee was Rossi went into the clubhouse and Happ said, if I make the team, whatever you do, don't announce it in front of everybody because I'm going to cry like a baby. So what does Rossi do? The guy who shouldn't have a job, in the clubhouse with everybody there, makes the announcement, which is great. You should do that because it's an honor for Happ to make the team. I think he was well deserved of it to make the team. What's your opinion on both of them making it?
Well, I'm happy that Contreras made it. I mean, he deserves it. We've talked about this on the show that we thought he might be the only All-Star. You look at him, he's hitting .266 with 13 home runs and 35 RBIs. Also smacked 17 doubles. Even his fielding stats, we know how great of a fielder he is at the catcher position. And he's got 6 runners stranded with only 3 errors. So I knew he was going to go. Happ, I mean, he was a reserve. I know on last week's show when you weren't here, we were surprised that Happ was going up the All-Star voting. But for him to get in, it's great. I mean, he's hitting .276 with 40 RBIs. If you look at it, he has 23 doubles and 2 triples. And defensively, he's doing what he needs to do. 76 games at left field and 6 outfield assists and basically 1 error. I mean, that's all-star stuff right there. I'm happy for him. And if Steve was on the show this week, he would be happy for him because that's his favorite player. So definitely deserving for the both of them. They should have gone in, and I'm glad they got in because, like I said, on last week's show, we thought it would only be Contreras, but Happ got in. So it's great to see that the Cubs are getting a little bit more representation, even in a bad year.
Yeah, now, looking at the team, all right, we're coming up to the midway point of the season. I mean, theoretically, we're over halfway, but, everyone looks at the All-Star game as the midway point. What's your overall thoughts on where we are?
Well, to be honest, I didn't think we would be this bad. I knew it was going to be a rebuilding year, but I didn't realize how bad it was going to get. But, if you look at what we're doing, I mean, we're trying to keep pace a little bit. We've won a couple of series, but at this point, I think and we've talked about it, we need to just go full rebuild. You got to find a way to trade Contreras, which I think is going to happen for the August 2nd trade deadline. And then who else are you going to move? Are you going to move Happ? I mean, it's just going to be a domino effect. I think at this point, you're going to have to rebuild. I would be really surprised to see if Ross is going to stay into August, because right now this is not, great baseball. The bus stops with the manager, and he's just not doing a great job. So whether the front office feels like he's doing a great job is, I don't know what they can say. I know Jed Hoyer said he wants to keep him, but is that just more smoke? When there's smoke, there's fire. So I have to imagine that Rossi's going to either be gone after the trade deadline or even next year. I just think at some point something needs to change, and that has to be, first David Ross. First it's the trade deadline, then it's David Ross, and then we can worry about where to fix holes next season.
Okay, so Cup or dud? Was Horner and Morel snubbed from the All-Star game?
I have to say that Horner was a little bit, just because if you look at his stats, I mean, he's leading the team in batting average is .306 and has 26 RBIs. Home run wise, only 5. But if you just look at the batting average, yeah, he was snubbed. Morel, I mean, he's a rookie. He's still learning the game. He hasn't been up that much, so I'm going to say he wasn't a snub. So it's half dub and half cup.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to see you back for Cubfrontation in a few minutes. We got Mr. Up himself coming in, and we're going to talk some Dodgers baseball. We're going out west.
Sounds good.
Mr. Up, where are you? There he is, the one and only Mr. Up.
Can I ask a question seriously? What was with Shearer? Was that Shearer or was that Dr. Forrester from Mr. Science Theater 3000? I mean, I'm expecting him to try to give a really bad movie to the bots at this point in time after his Orioles game was over with.
When we were talking earlier tonight, we wanted to do a crossover show before the series and maybe after the series, but we were talking and we knew we had the news that we were dropping with the trade rumor, and we said, let's go all out. We're going to let him do a takeover. Kept it quiet. I told Jay, Mr. Cubfidentiality, a couple of minutes before the show what was happening, because got to keep the producer in the loop. And, I just thought it was hysterical, because we know John Shearer is, full of hot takes and full of hot air. And he filled both of them in one show,
Well, something. I mean, remember what I was saying with the Orioles, and you've heard me myself. I said they're coming. You know what I mean? I've been saying that about a year or two. You know what I'm saying? They're starting to come. They're coming sooner than we even expected. And as far as your trade deadline, I didn't say David Robertson, but I did say Hendricks, and I still think the Mets. Even with the whole deal. So it's like, see, the biggest thing about it is the fact that right now at this point in time, we got Jordan trying to mock me on the whole 35 wins or lower, and he tried to do it a few games ago, and they still can't get over the hump. So it's just one of those. We're just dealing with the ridiculousness at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so what's your thoughts on the trade? Let's start there. If this happens, I expect Robertson to be moved no matter what. And I mean, if you look at the buyers right now, the Twins, if they're going to compete with the Astros and the Yankees, this is a move that they got to make, and they want Hendricks too. They want the whole kit and caboodle. So I mean, the Cubs getting back Balcevich, if they could do that, are you happy with that?
Man,
guy throws 100. He's a great young pitcher.
You know me with 100. You know me there. It's like good. And but you got to realize also that we've got David Ross at this point in time. So he'll throw his 100. He'll get 3 innings. He'll send them out for 6 more pitchers. I mean, that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes with this guy. And it's just like we can have that. But as far as the trade, I'll miss Hendricks. And I'm just going to say that right then and there. And there's Robertson. You know what I'm saying? And then there's Robertson. And it's like, that's not a shock. None of it's a shock at this point in time. But what I want to see out of something like that is I want to see a bunch of draft picks. I want to see a bunch of them. And that's all the thing about this. And I believe we can see that right now. But Robertson's not a big, giant loss. We're just going to see we're going to be going to the by August, we'll be going to go all the way into the minor leagues anyway. But Hendricks is a thank you and a farewell. You know, that one's, I mean, remember, he pitched our game 7, you know, for the thing.
I mean, you see it happening. I mean, Robertson is an obvious. Relievers, you're not going to win. It doesn't really matter. You know, you get rid of them. They did that last year as well when they actually were in contention at that point when they made the trades. You know, but as far as starters, that's another level. And, you know, when you're getting rid of a starter, you basically said that you're going to be not so good for a couple of years. You know.
Well, let's go straight into the Dodgers thing for a second. Let's go to the Dodgers thing now while we're talking about this. That game when they blew a 5-run lead. Let me tell you this. First off, there was a combined 13 pitchers. So both sides were ridiculous. That's number one. Number two, of course this has happened because 4 of the 6 pitchers in that game have blown a save this year. Blown a save, 4 of the 6. So there's nothing. Drew Smiley gets 2 innings. But here's what's so funny. You get Swarmer, who always gets swarmed. You get he always gets swarmed. I mean, he gets murdered. Then you get Mark Leiter Jr. He gets murdered. And it's like, and then look, Espinoza. They keep Espinoza out for 3 innings. He has 4 walks. It's like, does he even have any plan? It's like, better save the pitchers over my 4th pitcher. I better save him, put him 3 innings and get slaughtered, you know? And it's like he doesn't have a thought process. Like I said, he learned sitting on the bench of Madden. He didn't learn in the minor leagues. He didn't learn doing college. He didn't learn any of that. He didn't learn on a third baseline. He didn't learn any of that.
But you would think all the years he played, I mean, you know, he only had Madden for a few years. You would think you know, why he thinks Madden's way is the right way. You know, Madden's way works if you win. If you're not winning, it's not the right way to manage.
Well, you got to realize also it's the only one he knows. Period. End of story. It's the only way he knew. He was basically sitting next to the guy for that time. But you got to realize also not everybody can. I think personally, to me, Ross has a future. If he allows himself to go down, he has a future as a manager. But let's just say this right now. Ted Williams, remember him? Ted Williams was a terrible manager. And it's just the reason he wasn't terrible. And I'm not going to compare Ted Williams and David Ross as a player. Not a chance. But I'm talking about not every single person can do this. Not every single person can get straight into managing. It's like Ted Williams was a horrible manager. And it's just because he had like a 2010 vision. And how do you explain hitting to these people? So it's like it's the same with David Ross. If you only had one person to sit next to for that time and then you're using it, you weren't a third base coach, you weren't anything, you didn't go down to the minors, then you're going to have all this. You know what I'm saying? And he only had 60 games to get a division title. And then from there on out, he's been terrible.
Yeah, it's, you know, speaking of the Sunday game, you know, it was a bad game. I'm watching. First of all, I missed the 5 runs. Turned it on 5-0, and you know, after I turned it on, I just felt bad things. You know when you just feel bad things happening?
Well, that's the Cubs all year. That's the Cubs all year.
No, it's the Dodgers. Their offense is so good, and you think you're up 5, you're okay. No, you can't. You have to score 10, 15, 20 runs to beat them with a pitching staff like the Cubs have.
Well, that wouldn't have mattered. That wouldn't have mattered anyway. It's like you got to realize we lost to the Orioles, and that's embarrassing. But still, you know, I had to give my little shot to Shearer tonight. So Dr. Forrester.
There's no rhyme or reason as to what, you know, how good this team is. They're, you know, a $200 million tank steamrolling the National League until the playoffs when everything changes. And, they may get out of the playoffs and get to the World Series, but it's a different game come October. I see Will asking me a lot of Yankee questions. Boone is not a great manager. I dislike him. I would have fired him years ago, but that's me.
At least you're admitting it. At least you're admitting it. I have to talk to a lot of the emotional nitwits over there that are pretending they never said that. It's like they never said they wanted to be booed. At least you're staying consistent.
Listen, I'm a firm believer. We fight about this on sideline all the time. John cannot understand how I can dislike players on my own team. I think that's important that, I can do that because it's objective. If I just loved everyone because they wore the jersey of my team, I wouldn't be able to be objective. There are guys that...
Yeah, but look at Shearer. I'm sorry I'm interrupted. Look at Shearer, though. He's had many years to hate his players on his team, but they were always losing. He can love them right now because they're winning.
Yeah, I mean, and I give a lot of credit to the Orioles, but the Cubs are where the Orioles were a couple of years ago. The first thing I ever covered in sports when I started my show, and I will always give the Baltimore Orioles credit. I covered the Baltimore Orioles in spring training. I learned about their team and their minor league system, and got a chance to sit down with the director of player personnel, Matt Blood, who came from the Cardinals organization and ran USA Baseball.
That explains a lot about what the Orioles are doing right now. He came from the Cardinals organization, who never loses.
And he ran USA Baseball. I got a chance to sit down with him to figure out how he hired his coaching staff, because this was the year after Buck. And they replaced, I want to say, like 40 coaches throughout the whole organization. And they did a full rebuild. And you could see what they've done in those couple of years, and how far they've come. And this is what the Cubs are going to be. Listen, forget last year. Forget this year. Get what you can for Hendricks. Keep Happ and Contreras if you want to keep him. I'm 50-50 on that. If you can get something, worthwhile for Contreras that's more than his value, that'll be good in 2 years, I do it in a second. Otherwise, there's no way in the world I trade him.
Let Shearer brag. He's waited a long dang time for Baltimore to get there, so let him brag. We've had our time too. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. I'm proud of the Orioles just for the fact that I got to cover them. I'm not happy tonight, since the Cubs are kind of my adopted second team here. It's been a tough week considering for me, before the whole Chicago thing, the Dodgers would have been my National League team that I like, but I've kind of switched over to the Cubs. I'm still a Yankee fan. I want to see the Yankees beat everybody, but I would have went Dodgers in the NL. That would have been my team. I'm sorry. I got to see the Cubs get destroyed by the Dodgers all weekend. And then I got to see, Baltimore come in, and the first team I ever got to cover it. I have a little attachment to them because no matter what, they're the first team I got to cover, and I like their front office. The fact that, here was this guy, my first, I'm new, he's sitting down with me. He's got an important position, and he's sitting down for an interview with me in spring training, taking his time and getting to meet the staff and see how they're doing. But I see a lot of similarities with what the Cubs are doing with their farm system, and it's going to be fun to watch. 2024, 2025, it's going to be all Cubs.
Well, yeah, and it's like the thing was though, it was, and they're rebuilding now. It's a necessary rebuild now, but it became an unnecessary one really fast earlier on. It was unnecessary.
Oh yeah,
before, but it was unnecessary. But it's like number one with the Orioles, like I said. The minute you said player personnel came from the Cardinals. Duh. No wonder they're starting to win. It's like there's just the whole thing. It's like I said to you before, 32 out of 40 seasons with a winning record, like 17 division titles, some ridiculousness, 3 World Series. These are the things and it's like Baltimore, and they've had such a struggle for a long time. That's the first thing you got to do, then firing all the coaches. Absolutely, you do that. As far as the Cubs go, It is now a necessary rebuild. When it was unnecessary the year before that, it really was, because they were still around. But you know something? The biggest thing about the Cubs now is the fact that I'm gonna miss him, but the guy Hendricks has to go. I mean, if you could get anything for Strom, he's got to go. Everybody, you're going to have to put Swarmer as a number one ace, even though he gets swarmed, like I said. You know, and it's whatever you're going to have to take, and you have to get killed, and they might have to win 55 games. It just might have to get to that level.
Think about 2024, 2025. That's your years. You know, I'm a firm believer in, are you going to win the World Series? If not, what's the point? You know, is seeing a wild card game that exciting? You're not even going to get the wild card this year, but playing next year for a wild card game, is that what you're looking for? Or do you want to take a shot at winning it all? You know,
well, you got to realize something with the wild card game. It depends on what you get. It's like you get the wild card game, you get the one wild card game, you never know who gets hot. Then you get into a series. So, see, that's the thing with now. If you're going into a regular series, no, you really don't, because you could probably lose 3, but you just get that one game. Get that one game. Someone gets hot, you can't tell. But that's the point about it. It's like, as far as you were saying, I know what you're meaning, though. It's like you want to be able to, you want to win 103 like you did with 2016. You want to do that. Yeah. But at the same time, you don't know if you get, remember the 116 wins by Seattle and they got beat by the Yankees. So that's like in 2001, so you just can't tell. Sometimes you just got to find a way to get hot.
Exactly. So, Cub or dud? Horner or Morel? All-Stars?
No. Morel had been around enough. I mean, and everything like that. It's like, and I think he gets to his points of struggling sometimes, even if he's like 1 for 4, 1 for 5. I like his enthusiasm a lot, but I'm going to forever say he belongs in that 4 spot. I love his power. But no, Horner, no, because he's never played. This is the most amount of games he's ever played in his career. And it's like, to me, and he's looking nice, but I can see him dipping down. He just hasn't played enough to make that worthy in the first place. So we're going to be talking about that in just a second.
So, all right, we're going to go straight into Cubfrontation. We're not even going to switch people up. You're going to go first because we're running a little bit long tonight with all the craziness.
I always do.
So, not you. It's everything. There's a lot going on tonight.
Yeah.
So, tonight, Cubfrontation. Last one of the first half of the season. Historical. Xander Bogaerts, rumored to be coming to the Cubs. Is that an improvement or not?
I'm going to just show this face right here. It's like, are you kidding? The guy, 300 years. He has 148 career homers. Horner has 8 career homers. He gets on base with a walks. He'll average 80 more points in the on base percentage than 80 more points on the on base percentage than he does the batting average. Its average is about 30 or 40 for Horner. He doesn't get on base the same way. Horner doesn't. Bogaerts gets on. He gets walks. He gets everything. He has a slugging percentage. He plays better. I think he plays better defense personally. It's like, if you're keeping Horner, you're kind of keeping a loyalty. But if you're wanting to win right off the spot, and you want to get to that quote-unquote wild card before the 2024, 2025, you get Xander Bogaerts. You get the guys, you start getting power, you start getting everything. You go get bigger players. That's a start, because you got to go get bigger players. You got to get a bigger player first. Then you got to go get more of them. That's how you build your team, because no one ever wants to be the first. But when there is a first, when there finally is a first, you get it. And you get that you get that first time. And when you get it, then you get the bigger players. And then the Cubs rebuild again. Let's just hope there's not an unnecessary rebuild somewhere down the line.
All right, that was Mr. Up himself. He'll never live that name down. He loses it the next World Series, so we got a couple of years to go. Next, we got Jordan Long coming in as to why this is a bad move. Jordan, it's on you.
Well, first things first, Bogaerts has to opt out of his contract. If he does, should the Cubs be interested in him? Sure. He is a veteran, but my thing is I want power in the lineup. He doesn't bring that much power. This season, right now, he's hitting .315 with 7 home runs. With Wrigley Field, you're going to improve those those stats if the wind is blowing out, but the problem is it doesn't do that often. What happens if he hits .290? Well, the Cubs could do a thing and call, let him be. Don't go after him. I just think we're trying to rebuild. Is this really the way we want to rebuild? I say no. You're trying to get veteran players. It's not the way to do it. Go through the farm system. It would be a regression to get him because of the fact he wants to take his career to the next level to win a ring. You're not going to do that here in Wrigley Field. Go somewhere where you can actually be a starter and help a team win. Plus, what happens if he struggles with the at-bats? If he strikes out, which has been happening a lot for the Cubs, he lines out or pops out. What do they do then? Well, they're going to have to get rid of him. I just think the Cubs should not go after this guy. There's other veterans to get, or you just go in the system. It would be such a regression for the Cubs to go out and get him because I want to rebuild the right way, and I don't think getting him would be the right way to rebuild.
All right, Jordan makes some great points. Jacob, at the end of your minute, tell everyone where they can find you. And it's up to you, Mr. Up.
All right. The biggest issue we have is like everybody wants to go into the system all the time, but look at the let's just start with the pitchers. Look at the system at this point. It's like we brought our people in from the system, our pitchers, and they're getting slaughtered. And we're not guaranteed that they have an improvement in the first place. And then they're talking about, our big boy from the system hurt his hip and he's done. Then we got Crow Armstrong, some dude named Crow Armstrong. I call him Crow T Robot, looking for Tom Servo next. I don't see where the issue is. And this is an era now where we're looking, and we're in all sports where we're looking at the big boys more than ever. And it's not like it's not like you can't get there. It's not like you can't get there, can't get it. It's not like that. This is not the time like with Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning wouldn't have come if Tim Tebow didn't win 8-8. This isn't that time anymore. You can come into a terrible team with enough money. And this is the era for that. And just with saying that right there, I am on Thursday nights on the Pundits Pundit with Jennifer Matthews-Lewis and my brand new co-host, Jay Nelson. I already did a press release on that today. I'm on also Sunday with Basket Bros. I can't bring it because I'm running out of time. And then Monday nights, I am Monday nights during the season. Monday nights during the season, I am NBA Carousel, Megan and Price, and then Tuesday nights here.
Thank you, Jacob. And Jordan, same thing for you. When you're done, tell everyone where they can find you so we can wrap up. It's on you, Jordan.
You're still doing it wrong if you're trying to get veteran into your lineup. If you're wanting to rebuild, you have to rebuild the right way. That is by doing it in the system. You're trying to get top prospects to come up. You can't do it by just saying, hey, let's go get Xander Bogaerts. Yeah, it'd be a great move. On paper, you would get people in the seats, but the point is you want to rebuild to become like the St. Louis Cardinals. Guess what they do? They go into the system and actually get people in the system to actually do well when they bring them up. So that's what the Cubs have to do. I don't think Xander Bogaerts is the right move. Yes, you get a veteran, but in the end, it's a regression because you want to rebuild the right way, and that would be not doing it. So you can find me here on Cubfidential every Tuesday nights. I am on, and during the season, the NFL Carousel on Thursdays, the NBA Carousel on Mondays, and I have my blog that I write Mondays through Fridays at sports-scoop.com, podcast on Fridays, and I have my own show called Under Review that I record on Fridays. If you want to see it, go onto my blog on sports-scoop.com or wait until Saturdays when it's on the Sideline Sports Network.
Jordan, another great Cubfidential, but you know who gets to judge it tonight? Mr. Cubfidentiality himself. Who you got tonight?
Oh, man. So I found this topic because I found it interesting. Xander Bogaerts was one of the, I know you don't want to hear this, but he was one of the staple players for the Red Sox, especially last year when they made all the way to the ALCS. I'm actually going to probably side with Jordan on this one because if you're rebuilding, the thing that I don't want to see is I don't want to see Xander get there, and they solely depend on him. And what if he gets hurt? And then now you're basically like back where you started. But if you just go through the farm system and rebuild fresh and such, Xander does bring, a lot of talent. He gets on base, just like Jacob said, whether it's a walk or a hit, and the man can score. But you do it right, you go fresh, you go young, and if you succeed, you start to become a team that is constantly in contention. You're in the playoffs every year. You're in contention for the World Series, So yeah, I'm gonna actually award this one to Jordan, and I thought both sides did awesome. And of course, I had to pick a winner, so there you go.
Well, another great episode. Not a great night, in Chicago at Wrigley. The Orioles keep rolling. The Cubs, I don't know what they're doing, but next week got the All-Star game. We'll talk about the first half. We'll see what happens with the trade rumors. If that goes down, make sure you heard it here first. Sideline Sports, all over everything that's going on in sports. But we'll see you guys at the end of next week, and we'll talk some more.